Welcome to Kentucky.
The birthplace of Abraham Lincoln and built on the largest cave system in the known world. The home of Daniel Boone, Hunter S. Thompson, horse racing, and bourbon.
That when the hour grows late, the Bluegrass state becomes the breeding ground for realms beyond those familiar to the human race. In the east, ghosts, spirits, and ethereal entities roam the hills and hollers.
In the north, Mothman beats his wings along the banks of the Ohio River.
To the west, small green creatures stalk farmhouses and disappear without a trace when shot.
While in the south, the energy of the Veiled Witch is palpable just over the border. Joining with us as we investigate just what goes wrong in the Bluegrass night.
And ask the question, how many coincidences are too many? There's no need to check the clock.
There's no need to check the clock. Time is an illusion.
Time is an illusion.
And it's midnight.
It's midnight. In Kentucky.
In Kentucky.
In Kentucky. In Kentucky. In Kentucky. In Kentucky. In Kentucky. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the midnight hour once again, and for Midnight Kentucky, I'm Ben.
I'm Steven.
Tonight, we are going to do something we haven't done yet on this show, a sequel to an old show in which we talked about all manner of different beast and strange creature that walks the bluegrass. Little did I know at the time, a lot of our stuff comes from a guy named Barton Noonley, which Steven discovered.
Yeah, I found his book. I won't say I found it on Amazon, and he has several books. The book that we'll be getting most of our content tonight is called Mysterious Kentucky, and I recommend everybody purchasing a copy of that. Sure.
Like, he literally goes into every single... I made the joke to myself today while I was reading through it together notes, like, we may as well just quit because it's all documented right here in
Absolutely.
Mysterious Kentucky. A lot of the stories we will be talking about tonight come from Mysterious Kentucky, along with his website, KentuckyBigfoot.com. A lot of our cryptid sightings on our last cryptid episode come from KentuckyBigfoot.com. Noonley runs that with another investigator, which was at Crypticon alongside us, Charlie Raymond. Both of them do phenomenal research into the Bigfoot and cryptids on that site, so be sure to check that out. So we're going to be looking at a lot of cryptids from Mysterious Kentucky, a few different cryptids from different sources. I know you've been doing some research in another book. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's called Aliens Over Kentucky. And it's available again on Amazon either through Kindle or through, you can get it on paperback. The authors of Aliens Over Kentucky is Jacob Floyd and Jenny Floyd. I think it's husband and wife team that investigate stuff. And there's a lot of good stuff in that book that complements Barton's book.
Yeah, and it all kind of plays in together. It's that whole thing that we were talking about before the show about how you go back long enough on these timelines and all of these things start tying together in some way, or they start connecting to each other, especially in the cryptid and high strangeness field and supernatural and paranormal. Like, it seems like, one of the cryptids we're going to talk tonight, the Bearilla, is only, like, in Mount Sterling, where this thing was seen, is only like 20 minutes away from Waddy, which is the Waddy werewolves and things like that. So it's very interesting how all of these things connect together into one cohesive thing.
Right. And honestly, if you start looking, it's a lot of them happen in the same region of Kentucky.
Yeah.
They're similar. Yeah. Or they happen, around Mammoth Cave. Or, or waterways,
the cave
Ohio
system,
River.
The water waves.
Yeah.
The Ohio River is a big one. They were actually talking on something. It was that Bearilla documentary that I watched today that we'll talk about in just a little bit. Kentucky is second in the nation for running water behind Alaska, I think. Is it Alaska?
I think so, yeah.
Texas, maybe? But yeah, we're the second in the nation for running water. And as we've said many times on the show, running water definitely has something to do with, all of this stuff. It seems like running water is around when the majority of high strangeness happens.
Right. It seems to be, joined with that. And one thing I know Barton talks about, and this probably a few months ago I drove through some of these things, is the ancient mounds.
Yeah, he talks about the mounds a lot.
Yeah, and a lot of this activity happens around those. And in the future, hopefully we can do a show that kind of explores those in the state of Kentucky.
For sure. That would be awesome. That would be a good one. We'll take a quick break and come back into it and get right into the cryptid and creature population of Kentucky. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me now? Because I feel so alone. Hello, hello, hello. Can you free me now? Before this heart turns to stone. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye to everything that holds me behind. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye to everything that I tried to hide. 'Cause no one knows what tomorrow holds. No, not me or you. And yesterday waits for no man, so you better think this through. Yes, you do. Today, I embrace the crazy that's been my life. Today, I can finally say that I'm happy to be alive. 'Cause no one knows what tomorrow holds. No, not me or you. And yesterday waits for no man, so you better think this through. 'Cause no one knows what tomorrow holds. No, not me or you.
Welcome back to Midnight in Kentucky. Tonight we are doing a sequel episode to our Curious Case of the Kentucky Cryptids episode earlier in the season. It seems like as soon as we put that one to bed, we found out so much more about the cryptid population in Kentucky and about all of the cryptids that we missed. On the last episode, we talked about quite a few. We talked about the Land Between the Lakes monster, the werewolves seen throughout Kentucky, called werewolves or dogmen, depending. But this episode is a follow-up to that. We're going to do as many as we can, and it's looking like there's probably going to be a third Kentucky Cryptids episode.
Trilogy.
A trilogy of Kentucky Cryptids. The Kentucky Cryptids Trilogy. So we'll probably won't cover all of everything in this episode, and we're also looking at doing some episodes, maybe solo on the dogmen and on the werewolves, because it's such a major big thing in Kentucky. So we'll drop them in a little bit tonight, but we're mainly going to focus on a lot of the lesser known cryptids, and I say that, and I've got Bigfoot littered throughout this thing. But we're going to start out with we're going to ease our way in. It's not a huge cryptid thing, but it definitely is strange, and it definitely occurs throughout the United States. And what I'm referring to is these phantom animals seen throughout Kentucky. We've had phantom cats, phantom hyenas, snakes, kangaroos. And by phantom, doesn't necessarily mean phantom as in ethereal or unseeable, but the fact that these animals are not native at all to Kentucky. With the black cat sightings, they're black cats and panthers in particular are seen a lot. They're one of the major they're one of the major out of place animals. And you caught a large cat on camera a while back, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a couple years ago. Caught it on the trail cam coming across the yard. It wasn't a black cat, but to me, it looked like a mountain lion.
Yeah.
It was, I've showed you the video, and it's, pretty large size cat. It definitely wasn't a house cat or a domestic cat.
Right.
That was coming through there.
And in the same area, me and Enric Steven's son saw a large black cat along the tree line out. Has he ever told you that story?
Yes, he has.
And I think we got pictures of it, didn't we?
I think y'all did, yes.
Bridget got pictures of it.
And Bridget also seen it out in the field behind her house.
Yeah, and large black cats have been seen throughout Kentucky. There's hundreds and hundreds of sightings. Barton actually mentions 2 separate sightings that he's had in mysterious Kentucky. And another podcaster, Derek Hayes of Monsters Among Us, talks a lot about his encounters with a black cat in Ohio. So they're not only in Kentucky. These phantom black cats are seen throughout the nation, really. And of course, black cats are not indigenous to North America. In addition, in Harlan County in the 70s, there was literally a phantom cat sighting. It was shot at. This cat supposedly attacked a domestic house cat, and this cat appeared like a saber-toothed tiger. It was shot at, the bullets passed through it, it couldn't be brought down, which is a reoccurring theme with Bigfoot being shot at, and then the bullets passed through him. It happened at Skinwalker Ranch, yes. I think, with that wolf. So it's interesting that these phantom black cats almost play by the same rules as these other creatures that happens to.
Yeah.
But then there's the hyenas as well. In addition to the black cats, hyenas have been seen in Kentucky. Hyenas, of course, are not indigenous to Kentucky whatsoever. In Uniontown in 2006, a couple passed by one on the side of the road. Other than hyenas, there have been large 28 to 30 foot snakes seen in Kentucky, particularly in Henderson County, where Barton is from, and makes note that Henderson County is a special type of environment, and that it almost resembles Skinwalker Ranch again to me, like a portal place where different things come through, right. Like all kinds of different stuff. But in in Henderson County, the Native Americans there called this thing the Iosa Sentai. And there are legends about these massive 28-foot, 30-foot snakes throughout Henderson County in the Native American population. But then in Trimble County, in the 60s, there was reports of a 28-foot snake. And that's particularly interesting because, as we know, Thomas Shea works up in Trimble County and has seen a major Bigfoot population up in Trimble County.
Yeah.
So it's weird that those two things happen, simultaneously.
Right, and that's all out in western Kentucky. Of course,
Right.
There's numerous sightings of various cryptids in western Kentucky.
So is Henderson close to Trimble County?
It is. It's all. I don't know the exact vicinity, but I think they're all in the western part of the state.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because Trimble and Henderson seem like a lot of those things seem to happen together there.
Yeah, and I think they're all around close, to, at least in the same vicinity as Land Between the Lakes.
Okay, so
I know Trimble is. I could be wrong about Henderson County, but
right.
Henderson County's right on the Ohio River, to my understanding.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So Trimble sits right on the Ohio River.
Yeah, or Henderson does.
Right. So it's just interesting that and this is a reoccurring theme, like that you'll hear tonight. All of these sightings tend to take place, whether it be Bigfoot or UFOs, all of these things happen together. A lot of researchers, will talk about, they'll say that the Bigfoot sightings that reoccur with UFOs or the large animal sightings, like the big cats being seen with Bigfoot, which has happened, not in Kentucky, but there are sightings with these large black cats being seen alongside Sasquatch. I've heard a lot of researchers say that those are not common reports, but then at the same time, you've got stuff like Skinwalker Ranch, where you see these weird animals, these weird, like the dire wolf at Skinwalker Ranch, and then they've got Sasquatch at Skinwalker Ranch, and then they've got UFOs at Skinwalker Ranch, and the Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania region, where there have been Bigfoot, there have been these large dogmen, there have been UFOs, there have been everything. So, to me, it seems like these anomalous animals and these phantom animals are not simply zoological anomalies, but that something weird is up with them. And that something is up with the whole high strangeness of these animals being in these areas.
It very reminds me of Skinwalker Ranch. And I remember there's the Hunt for Skinwalker, one of the books. One of the scenes, or one of the parts in that book is the person is like in the woods, and the character from Predator, the alien, is chasing them, and then it like just looks at them and disappears.
Yeah.
Which to me blows my mind how it, whatever this may be, simulated that from his mind or something from.
But I definitely think that whatever this is also can play with our definition of reality.
Yeah.
Like whatever these cryptids are, and this is just based on the things that I've read and the things that I've researched. But to me, Bigfoot is not an anomalous animal. You know what I mean? It's not a zoological thing. It's more of a spiritual thing. These anomalous animals that are being seen are not zoological creatures per se. There's something involved with this entire phenomenon. I mean, and I'm sure that some of them are. I mean, I'm sure that some of these large black cats are just large black cats. But it's odd that these tend to happen in the same region as other anomalous activity.
Right.
Or other high strangeness.
I believe they're all connected somehow.
Right. But also on the anomalous animals, we had a commenter post on our last Kentucky Cryptids episode asking if we had heard anything about kangaroos in Kentucky. And there are actually two separate things that kind of go into this. But the first, I feel like, is appropriate to talk about in this section of the show because these are literal kangaroo sightings in Kentucky. These sightings of kangaroos in Kentucky started in 1899. And not only were they sighted in northern Kentucky, but were sighted all across northern America. I'm reading this from a blog called Unusual Kentucky, and they think that this may have been a case of mass hysteria. But it is interesting that, not only were these kangaroos seen in North America, or northern Kentucky, but all across North America at the time. I mean, that's a pretty large span of people seeing kangaroos, and random kangaroos at that. Not only that, but in 1974, kangaroos were reported running wild in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. There are apparently photographs of these kangaroos, and were verified sightings in 1978 in Wisconsin. So, I mean, right there is a verified case of these kangaroos in northern America. People have also reported these kangaroos in the past 20 to 30 years, seeing them on the side of the road, seeing them in different places along Kentucky. So in answer to your question, not only have there been reportings of actual kangaroos in Kentucky, there are also a few cryptids that have resembled kangaroos that people have talked about that we will get to later in the show. But I felt like it was pertinent to mention those kangaroos in the anomalous animals section of the show, just because that's weird that we have kangaroos running around.
Yeah.
And apparently a lot of them.
Yeah. And they've been, spotted in other states.
Right.
So obviously at one point in time we had kangaroos here, or some type of simulation of kangaroos.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Of running around out in the open. And maybe has disappeared through the years. Maybe they've died off or just decided to take another form.
Or, maybe they are part of this whole weird alien animal, anomalous animal thing of just whatever. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a temporal rift where we get these animals, or like you said, maybe it's all some different, a same entity taking on a different form. It's just odd. It's odd that we have these massive snakes and hyenas and black cats and kangaroos all in Kentucky, all happening around the same area where we see Sasquatch and UFOs and, stuff like that.
And I kind of joking here, kind of not, but it's very possible, maybe these kangaroos were abducted from Australia and just dropped off or misplaced here in North America.
Well, a few months back we had that whale that just appeared in the middle of the South American jungle.
Right.
That's yet to be explained how this massive whale got in the middle of the South American jungle. So there is precedence for random animals appearing in random places. So yeah, maybe it did get abducted and replaced in northern Kentucky.
It's kind of like that Rick and Morty interdimensional cable. Like, how did I get here?
How did I get here? What's going on? No, it really is. Yeah, completely. Next up, we have...
we're going to discuss Spring Hill Jack.
Yeah, which Stephen has done a lot of research on. I originally only thought that Spring Hill Jack was located in London in the late 1800s, but apparently there's been some sightings here in Kentucky.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I thought. I thought it was kind of like something over in London, over in Europe. But it looks like there have been some sightings here actually in Kentucky. Yeah, so in 1880, the same year that Jack the Ripper was making his crimes and stuff in London, this Spring Hill Jack character was sighted in Louisville. The date that's given here is on July 28th, 1880.
So at the same time Jack the Ripper was on his spree in London.
Yeah.
Spring Hill Jack was sighted here?
Yes.
In Louisville?
That's what I...
Really?
Yeah. And that kind of made me think, geez, did they ever catch Jack the Ripper?
No, Jack the Ripper still, nobody knows who he is.
Or what he was, maybe.
Or what he was. There's all kinds of theories. Some people think he was like the Prince of England or maybe the Queen of England. Like, it gets wild.
Right.
Yeah, but no, he's never been caught.
Wow, that's interesting because these were going on at the same time. And the way they have described him, that the one that was seen in Louisville was a tall, thin weirdo who appeared to be what is known now as an Old Louisville. I'm not sure what that's at. I'm sure some of our listeners can tell us.
Right, yeah.
And I guess 1880, maybe Louisville was at a different spot, kind of like Burnside is.
Yeah.
That he was going around attacking women in the streets. And the weird thing about this guy is that really this is bizarre, is that he has like these, what they describe as springs on his shoes.
Right.
And I guess he kind of looks like one of those spy versus spy characters. Is the way I understood it.
Do the Spring Hill Jacks, do they have those big plague masks?
Yeah, that's kind of what it looked like.
Okay.
Yeah,
like those huge long nose things.
Yeah, that's what I understood it. And I guess it's kind of like, and then he wears like a dark trench coat and a hat.
Yeah. Almost like the Hat Man in a way.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right, just like the Hat Man, yeah. And he would leap from like building to building, almost like doing parkour type stuff.
Yeah.
From like rooftop to rooftop. Then he would land in the streets and he would attack women and tear off their clothes and then run off. Many witnesses have seen this, and a lot of women have, experienced it. And he has like what's described as superhuman abilities to leap and jump over carriages, even jump on top of rooftops. And there's an area called, also in addition to Old Louisville, what appears to be Butchertown. Maybe he was noticed that also. There's a lot of speculation of what he was.
Right.
Or where
Some
he come
people think
from.
he's an alien. Some people think he's an alien, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also some like other reports, I think, afterwards from what I've read up on him, like after these initial attacks.
Sure.
Because then he just kind of disappeared.
Right.
That people maybe were copycats, like some type of crazy people.
Right.
Actually put springs on their shoes and wasn't able to leap as high as him or do the things. And I think maybe even some of them maybe even like broke and ended up getting caught. And maybe the common thing was like, hey, look, we caught him.
Kind of like they do today
right,
or what we speculate they do today.
Yeah. Yeah, some people, think that he is a extraterrestrial. But one of the other descriptions of him, he has red eyes, pointy ears, pale skin. He has long from right. Like I guess long fingernails are like claws on his hands, and then he's able to leap, from building to building, rooftops, leap really high. But the odd thing is they also said, and some witnesses said, he's able to breathe fire.
Whoa.
Yeah, like a dragon.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And so, I mean, but his sightings, continued, was 1880 in Louisville, but it looks like they continued on into the 20th century across England. And then.
So he was reported in Louisville before he was reported in England?
I think, yeah.
Whoa.
But then here's the weird thing is in 1953, he was, 3 Houston residents, experienced the same thing, same description. It was like a man he was a spotted tall man, black cape, skin tight pants, had boots, and he was leaping through town onto rooftops and assaulting women.
Interesting. So it sounds more like some type of entity itself, or some type of, than it does like you've got the Hat Man, you've got all of these, like you've got Sasquatch-like creatures, you've got the Greys, black-eyed kids. Like this sounds like maybe the Spring-Hill entity is a entity within itself, almost.
Yeah, and some people have. There's also, I guess, another type of entity in Louisville, Old Louisville, back in the same time frame. They call the Demon Leaper.
Whoa!
And it's pretty much the same thing to what way I've read up on it. A lot of people think it's the same thing under just a different name. Spring Hill Jack is the Demon Leaper. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I was gonna say, and I'm not necessarily down with the theory that all these are demonic, but yeah, in the Damien sense, as the old Greeks knew it, of all of these different entities and things. Maybe this Spring Hill Jack Demon Leaper is one type of certain entity that does. It obviously has an interest in trying to assault and abduct women, which a lot of these entities do for whatever reason. So. So he was seen in Louisville, though? Like, how many times was he sighted in Louisville altogether?
It looks like maybe 2 or 3 sightings as far as during the 1880.
Right.
And then maybe there were some sightings afterwards, which some people believe those were the copycats.
Right.
Yeah, a few years later.
Dude, that's wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
And then he moved on to England after.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think he started out in England, and then he come to Louisville, and then like disappeared, and then appeared back in England.
Right.
And then it looks like maybe he appeared in Houston, but the Houston one could have been a copycat one. But
it could, yeah. But still, I mean, that's very strange. That, yeah.
Yeah, but that was in 1953 in Houston, which is hundreds of years
Later.
Yeah.
After, yeah. It's almost like the Mothman, because the Mothman I thought was a one-off entity for a long time until I started really doing some research, and the Mothman have been seen, everywhere, all around Kentucky and Ohio and West Virginia, and, and different parts of the world. Interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Next, we come to a particular type of cryptid that may play into the Bigfoot population in Kentucky, may play into the dogman. In Barton Noonley's book, Mysterious Kentucky, they are listed under the diminutive beings of Kentucky, which we have several. It seems like we have several of these little critter-like creatures running around. But in this particular instance, I'm referring to the Monroe County monkeys. This is somewhat of a local legend in Monroe County, where there exists a location called the Monkey Cave Hollow. This name was given by early settlers and referred to the strange tribe of monkeys which inhabited the area, living in caves and foraging for roots and berries. These were seen by early settlers, and this is why this region gets its name. Apparently, the last of them, according to reports from the settlers, were killed off in the early 20th century. But the region of Monroe County has a lot of odd things that happen around it. And as Barton notes in Mysterious Kentucky, is bordered on 3 sides by the state's largest lakes, Barren River Lake, Dell Hollow, and Lake Cumberland. Another interesting thing about these monkeys is at the beginning of this season, our very first episode of Season 2, we reported on animal mutilations that had occurred in Monroe County, where it looked like these animals had their throats slit and basically killed for no other reason than to be killed. Very mutilation type surgical precision. And it was speculated that whatever had killed these things were maybe a dogman or a Sasquatch. The official story was
dogs.
But in the paranormal community and the supernatural community, it was rumored that maybe a Sasquatch or maybe a dogman, and it very well could have been. But the very interesting that we have this legend of these monkeys in Monroe County, and we have these mutilations, and you had even found out that these mutilations had went back further than just this instance, right?
Right, yeah. The, Monroe County, I think back, in the earlier days, settler days, there was animal mutilations out there at that point, too. So it almost seems like it's a reoccurring thing. And I'm thinking there was some back in the 70s also.
Yeah, almost like these things occur every so often.
Right. Which
actually does get into something that we'll discuss later about how these things, maybe they go dormant for a few years, or they go into hibernation for a certain amount of time and then they recur. Maybe the portal that wherever they come from only opens up so often, so they come out at that time.
Right. And also, in this area is the cave system, Mammoth Cave.
Right. The caves.
And
for sure.
There's lots of places definitely in that area for them to hide.
Oh, yeah.
And even where we live at in the area, Lake Cumberland area, and what they're talking about, Barren River Lake and Green River Lake and all that, Dell Hollow Lake, there are cave systems in this area, not, elusive or as large as Mammoth Cave,
right.
But still there's cave systems in this area that we don't even know about.
Right, where something could easily hide. And that's worth noting. I mean, a lot of these things that we're talking about, and I'll, especially once we get into the more Bigfoot-like creatures in Kentucky, a lot of these things that we're talking about occur around caves. They happen around a cave or somewhere that, a creature or creatures could hide in, or, that something could be coming out of, for all we know. There could be a massive portal in the middle of this cave system that these things are coming out of. But it's very interesting that there's these sightings of these diminutive monkeys around these cave systems, much like the Hellier, the goblins, another diminutive being that's seen around these cave systems and within these cave systems. But moving on from the Monroe County monkeys, we come to another creature that we actually talked about on Kentucky Cryptids 1, the gravedigger. This comes from Barton Noonley's Mysterious Kentucky, from a man who is known as, who Barton calls T, but has the real name on file. It says, me and a friend went fishing one morning. It was in the spring about 1970. We walked a few miles east on L&N railroad tracks from Shelby City, Kentucky. It is now known as Junction City, Kentucky. We would sneak into this pond to bass fish. It had to be the home before noon one day, so I started back by myself and left my friend fishing in the pond. On the way back down the tracks, this creature landed on tracks in front of me. When I say landed, I mean jumped, because all of it was a blur, and there it was. It stood about 4 feet tall and stood or squatted on 2 legs. It was covered with real fine fur on its fat body. It had a little round head and moved like an owl's head, almost in circles. It had little round eyes and a full mouth of razor-sharp teeth. Its teeth were almost transparent, kind of like a bat's. It sort of favored a bat in the face. It had small ears and a small nose. The thing didn't have any lips, just teeth. Its arms looked like they came out of its chest, and they were spindly. It had long fingers and a thumb on each hand with long claws. Its arms didn't have any hair or fur on them. They were slick and oily looking. I'm pretty sure we reported on that particular incident in the last episode. But what's very interesting is another report that comes from April 2006 by a man named Billy in Pike County, who says that this happened on June of 1999. He describes the creature as almost kangaroo-like. Again, we go back to the kangaroos. So, it's interesting that this gravedigger creature is kangaroo-like, much like these kangaroo. So either what the people of who see this gravedigger are seeing are most likely these alien kangaroos, or these alien kangaroos are like these gravedigger creatures, which is pretty interesting. I mean, it's interesting that there exists, or either one of those is odd. Or maybe it's these gravedigger creatures turning into kangaroos somehow.
Right. And again, this was spotted in Bull County, which is, most people know the area as Danville, Junction City is the town you get in before you get into Danville. And that Pike County is on the far eastern end of the state. So that's some pretty good ground to have sightings of the same
creature.
You're right.
Just very interesting that they looked like kangaroos. That
is interesting. I think that is almost possibly what the Kentucky kangaroos are.
Yeah.
Just people assume they were kangaroos, maybe not. Because, how many of us have actually seen a kangaroo?
Right.
And know what it was if we seen one.
Seen
something similar to it, like this gravedigger is. Right. We would assume it was a kangaroo because it was hopping.
Yeah, very much so. Do you think that they saw the kangaroos and thought they were the gravedigger, or saw the gravedigger and thought they were the kangaroos?
I think they seen the gravedigger and thought they were the kangaroos.
So you think this gravedigger is something that lives like these other creatures and is in these portals and comes out?
Yeah, I think it lives somewhere or hides somewhere and then maybe goes into a portal and then comes back.
Or like in the caves. Are there caves in Bull County?
I don't think there's any. I don't know if there's any caves in Bull County. People can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any cave systems there.
It just pops up in screens. Yeah. From what it seems like, though, it seems like a little mouse-type kangaroo creature that just kind of scurries around.
That's kind of what I thought it was, yeah.
Yeah, like with an owl's head who has, like, bat teeth and stuff.
Yeah.
Let's take a real quick break. We'll come back and we'll get into some of these Bigfoot-like creatures seen in Kentucky, the Spotsville Monster, the Bearilla, and more. Thanks for listening to Midnight Kentucky. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Midnight in Kentucky. Now moving on from the gravedigger and the Monroe County monkeys, we're going to get into various Sasquatch-like creatures in Kentucky. Not all of these are Sasquatch, and all of these may be Sasquatch, but they definitely look Sasquatchian, Sasquatch-like. In Barton's book, Mysterious Kentucky, he makes note that due to the amount of sightings of Sasquatch in Kentucky, that he believes that there is a rather large Sasquatch population in Kentucky, and he believes that every county in Kentucky is home to these creatures. In Cave City, like we were talking just a few minutes ago with the caves, in 2007, a deer hunter heard and smelled what he believed to be a Sasquatch under his deer stand after crawling up into it at 6 o'clock in the morning. And it's the hunter's report says that he circled this. He circled the tree underneath the tree for about 10 minutes and made these grunting noises and smelled, the smell of these creatures like decomposed flesh. He could smell it very vividly. He notes, though, that when this creature came into the area, and this is interesting because this is an instance that will be highlighted again and again as we go through these different sightings of the very definition of high strangeness. Incidences like missing time and of in this particular instance, the high strangeness moment comes when he notices that all of the animals, all of the sound has drained away from the world, and all he can hear is this Sasquatch grunting. It's that moment that we talked about with the James Bunch story where he sees this UFO and he notices that all of the sound is gone. There is no sound around him. So I thought that was interesting to note in that particular sighting about the sound just being gone.
It's almost like these incidents draw people into an isolation booth or an isolation bubble.
Completely. Totally.
That's absent from our reality that we know.
Yeah, it removes them from reality or stops reality as we know it, just so they are witness to these particular events. So I just brought that one up to note that weird sound, high strangeness is in a lot of these weird Bigfoot cases. Oddly enough in Kentucky, there are a lot of, as Barton calls them in Mysterious Kentucky, atypical Bigfoot sightings, like sightings of Bigfoot that correspond with really weird things.
Right. And there's once you start looking at the book and also BigfootScience.com, there's a ton of these from Kentucky.
Oh, yeah. Literally, he says that he believes that there's a population in every county in Kentucky, and I could totally believe that.
I could believe that from all the sightings, and honestly, it becomes so overwhelming going through them that I didn't go through them all because there was too many.
Completely. I mean, there's tons of these sightings. The next case we're going to discuss in the Sasquatch encounters in Kentucky occurred on Wilson Ridge in our neighboring county, where we currently sit on the line between Casey and Russell. This happened in Casey County, Kentucky, in May of 1957. The boy is not named in Mysterious Kentucky, but a young boy about the age of 5 run into his mother while playing outside, distraught, and claims that he saw the hairy man, or what he referred to as the hairy man. This sighting impacted this kid so much that he refused to leave the house, broke down into fits of anxiety when he so much as walked outside the car. So whatever this thing was deeply impacted this kid. And it's worth noting that sightings like this is the first of many sightings in Casey County.
Yeah. And this sighting was, only a few miles. It's in northwestern Casey County, and it's only a few miles from where Green River runs through Casey County. Yeah. And again, there's all kinds of sightings around Green River that ties in to that throughout Kentucky. That's a river run through Kentucky, and there's all kinds of Bigfoot sightings around this river. Which
Barton makes note of, that Green River is very much an area of high strangeness, and maybe an area where the veil is thin and these creatures can walk through and come through all different types of creatures.
Yeah.
Apparently, the boy describes coming upon this creature, a gray-silver hairy creature digging in the ground with 2 sticks while playing outside near Wilson Ridge in Casey County. So located very close to this sighting in the 1960s, just a few years afterward that this hairy man had been sighted in Wilson Ridge, on US 127 near Liberty, a hairy bipedal creature was reported looking in the windows of local teenage girls, which again is a reoccurring thing with this. The Hopkinsville Goblins looked in windows.
Yes.
The Spotsville Monster, which we'll talk about later, was seen looking in windows. Something about these, our windows attract these creatures.
Yeah. It's almost like it's a portal-like system for them looking into a home.
Also in the area at the time, in Casey County, what were known as varmints were seen down in the Goose Creek region of Green River. Where exactly is Goose Creek?
Actually,
pretty close to us, right?
Actually, Goose Creek runs through Russell County, and it runs through pretty within probably 5 miles of where we're at, and then connects into Green River, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So, I mean, this could very well be pretty much in the area of Casey County that we could throw a rock into from here.
Right. And to link this back in, this is the same area where we believe the James Bunch UFO sighting occurred. Same area that we believe, that we know that Daniel Wilson has his sighting over the Parkway. In addition, reports have come out of there recently of drone-like craft flying over small communities, which I wrote about in the Lake Cumberland Current recently. So Casey County is a very strange place, particularly Goose Creek and Green River. But these varmints were reported so heavily in the 1960s that squads of monster hunters went out to try and to find this thing and kill it. And again, it goes back to that whole them looking in windows. They seem to really like looking in windows.
Right. And that's, to me, that's kind of like, how Bigfoot's portrayed a lot of times, or these cryptids. They're always looking in the windows at humans in their environment.
Right. It's very interesting. The goblins in Hopkinsville are known for the whole looking in windows thing.
Right. That's how they actually noticed them.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah.
There was another one in 1965 in Casey County. It doesn't really give the location, but a state trooper, I guess, reported it, and he said it was yowling, like a howling.
Yeah. Okay, I did hear about that. What was that whole story? Did he actually see it, or did he just hear it?
I think he was just hearing it, and that was also in the Green River section of Casey County.
Interesting. So that was on Green River that he heard this thing?
Yeah. So it's probably in the same vicinity as the other sightings of Goose Creek, and because it connects into Green River. So I think it is right there, pretty much where they connect at.
These things are so prominent. These Sasquatch-like creatures are so prominent in Kentucky that there have been several break-ins that Barton mentions throughout Mysterious Kentucky. One particular break-in, a Sasquatch, or presumably Sasquatch, broke into a backyard freezer, took a frozen chicken and a few pieces of bread. Half the chicken was left, and this thing had basically just eat the entire end off this chicken and threw it down and run off. Not only that, but in Davies County, there was a sightings of these creatures, and again, a squad was formed, and they actually tracked this thing down and found it. And they opened fire on this thing, and the bullets passed right through it, like has been reported in several sightings of Bigfoots where people opened fire on them.
Yeah, numerous times.
The Chestnut Ridge, going back to that, they opened fire on those, and nothing happened. The bullets passed right through them. Same thing with the Phantom Cat in Harlan that we talked about earlier in the episode. They opened fire on it, nothing happened. Almost like a ghost. And I hate to use that word because I know that there are some people that actually, and, who knows what Bigfoot is, but I know that there are some people that believe Bigfoot to be a ghost or an apparition. And I would definitely say that these creatures are of the spiritual world, but I don't think that they are ghosts necessarily in the way that we believe as ghosts. Apparition may be a more correct word. But it's just interesting that it doesn't seem like we can, harm these things. Or
Right.
take them down. Does that mean that they can't harm us? I don't know. But it doesn't seem like our bullets can, or anything else can affect these things. Right. Almost like they are not of our world. Right.
It almost seems like the laws of our world does not apply to them.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Completely. And Barton also makes note that a lot of these things tend to happen, like you mentioned earlier, around burial mounds in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. That these creatures are seen around the burial mounds and around the Native American graveyards and different places like that.
Yeah. And one thing about the burial mounds, especially in Kentucky, and I think even like in Ohio, some of them over in that area, is they have uncovered bones that belong to giants.
Right,
that does not even appear to be possibly human.
Right.
But they were some type of giant race that was over here thousands of years ago.
Right. And not only that, but the fact that, Daniel Boone supposedly shot and killed one of something in Kentucky, whether it be one of these giants or a Sasquatch or a dogman, whatever it was, So it's very interesting that these burial mounds play so closely into this. And there's certainly something going on with these burial mounds that we will for sure cover fully in its own episode. Because I feel like that's enough information that it needs its own, its own episode. Barton also talks heavily about these atypical sightings, these sightings of Bigfoot or Sasquatch with UFOs seen around Kentucky, or glowing orbs of light. One of the most interesting of these was by a man named John, and he had seen these things repeatedly. And again, going back to the Skinwalker Ranch example, I know we use it a lot, but it seems like there are a lot of occurrences where these things take on a Skinwalker Ranch type level, or the Bell Witch, where it seems like the activity ramps up slowly, but then it gets to the point where something crazy is happening almost constantly. Like something like people are seeing, either apparitions or creatures or something, or hearing these voices that speak to them. And John's case is very, very, very much like this. Barton notes that several of them had seen these Sasquatch creatures. But he also notes that when John's family come in and started telling him tales, that they did not think that these creatures were of the physical world. The whole family had experiences with these creatures, but John's sister had the oddest experience, and said that she believed that there was a good and bad creature that lived on this property with them. The good one had light white fur, the bad one had dark fur. She also says that she believes that the good creature had saved her life after the dark-furred creature had walked through a wall at her one night, almost like a ghost, to try and attack her. And of course, this all sounds very strange. I mean, to the average Sasquatch researcher, I think this would be another realm of... The only problem with this is that there's precedence for this type of behavior. We've heard from a lot of researchers of the Land Between the Lakes region that there is a war between the dogmen and the Sasquatch. That the dogmen are maybe a evil type of creature, and that the Sasquatch are a good-natured creature. Of course, we don't know. Nobody knows, really. But, this war between the diabolical and the divine, as a lot of people call it, is something that reoccurs in instances like this. We also see this with the black-eyed kids. We see these instances of black-eyed kids coming to people's door, and then we see these white-clothed beings pushing back the black-eyed kids. So I found that really interesting, and something else that reminded me of is not only the woman that we spoke to at CryptiCon who told us about her encounters with the beings in her hallway, but Whitley Strieber in general, and the visitors, and how these things will come to you in these different forms and do things like this and walk through walls at you. And
again, it's almost like the rules of our world or our physics doesn't apply to them.
Right. And like these particular creatures in John's case and in John's sister's case, they seem to behave more like those visitors, like Whitley Strieber describes, than they do, Sasquatch or some type of Sasquatch.
Right, and I'm wondering if these entities cannot just take on any form they choose.
Right.
And all this stuff is the same thing, but just taking on a different form.
And see, that's the thing. Like, what if these creatures, it's the same entity, but, from the diminutive beings, from the monkeys, the supposed monkeys, to the Sasquatch, to the gravedigger, to what if these things are all the same creature, but take on a different form for whatever reason. That particular sighting, though, and the strangeness of that sighting, brings us to probably the strangest Sasquatch sighting in mysterious Kentucky, which ironically occurred fairly close to us in Somerset, Kentucky. For a frame of reference, Somerset is the area where this summer there were several UFO reports, one of which we documented on UFOs over Central Kentucky a few episodes back. This particular incident occurred on Highway 461 between Somerset and Mount Vernon. So in December of 2004, this particular witness was leaving Somerset Hospital, was on her way back to Lexington, I believe. That would be the way you go back to Lexington.
Yeah, you would go back to Lexington from Somerset.
Was on her way back to Lexington, had another person in the car, and according to the report in Mysterious Kentucky, she saw a dead cat in the road. And all of a sudden, as she was coming upon this dead cat, she also saw a ball of white fur. It's very odd how she describes this particular ball of white fur, because it doesn't sound like she's describing a Sasquatch at all. It sounds like she's describing a literal ball of fur. But I don't, and I may be completely wrong on this. If the witness or anybody is listening that knows anything about this particular case, please get in touch with us as always and inform me. But it almost seems like she doesn't have the words to describe what she's seeing, other than she sees this ball of white fur. When she sees it, the car hits it. She hits it with her car. So when she hits it with her car, she spins into a nearby, I guess, off the road. And it almost sounds as if she goes off the road when she hits this thing. She makes a U-turn in the grass when she goes off the road and turns around and manages to get back on the road and stops at a gas station. Now, when she hits this thing, she immediately smells this awful, terrible odor that is often associated with Sasquatch. But it's the way that she describes hitting this thing that her, she says that she should be scared. They both should be scared. She's 100 miles away from home, and this thing probably messed her car up. But she's not. In fact, her and her friend are laughing hysterically. And they have no idea why they're laughing hysterically. They're just laughing hysterically. She's not scared. She said she's calm. She said it was very much that that feeling that you get when you hit something. For just a minute, you're like, oh, no, I'm about to hit this. You hit it, and then you just roll with it.
Yeah.
But she was in a state of laughter. She was laughing the whole time. And she got turned around and got to this gas station. When she got to the gas station, she found white hair in her front of her car, along with the tailpipe. But she was also missing 90 minutes of time, which is, anybody that lives in the area knows that, it doesn't really take an hour and a half to get from Somerset Hospital to that area of the road to 461. Minutes. Yeah. I mean, you could honestly be at the turnoff in Mount Vernon in 30 minutes, could you not?
Yeah. Yeah, you could be at the interstate in 30 minutes or less.
Easily. So that amount of missing time is quite a substantial amount of missing time. There's really no way you could have left Somerset Hospital driving for that turnoff and not have made it in that amount of time. But of course, this missing time goes back to alien abduction encounters. A lot of high strangeness. Missing time is a major element in high strangeness. We were actually talking about this. There's a book about this, right?
Yeah, I forget the author's name, but it's Missing Time, and it just kind of documents and discusses a lot of these cases. It doesn't focus on the abduction or what happened, but it focuses on the missing time these people had or experienced.
Right. And that's interesting because it's not just abductions that missing times reported. It's stuff like this.
Right. It's Bigfoot sightings. It's abductions. It's even, even just being out in the woods and then something weird happens and you
lost an hour.
You lost an hour and you have no idea why.
Right. What all's on that little stretch of road?
461 runs, between Somerset and Mount Vernon, comes off of 80 as you're going towards London, East 80. And off of that road is several factories. Factory that used to be called Illumitech is out there. Mm-hmm. And then Toyota Tetsu is out there. Right. The Valley Oak Industrial Park, which contains Blackboard and the little top secret CIA of what they do out there. I've heard they do like some type of support for the CIA, and then also I've heard it's just for the police force. I think Operation Unite is also out there, possibility.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. At the time that this sighting would have occurred, 2004, would all of this still have been out there?
I think these have been out there probably in the last 10 years, because they built the Valley Oak thing, and that was going in out there probably in 2005 or 6.
Right.
So it's probably, this I think occurred before that.
Okay. Before these factories went in.
Yeah.
So would there have been anything out there at the time?
Illumitech and Toyota Tetsu was probably the only two things out there.
But it is.
And Somerset Performance Foods is right next to where Illumitech used to be.
But it is a pretty long stretch of road, right?
Yeah, and it's pretty desolate.
Right.
There's, I think, a little gas station after past Toyota Tetsu.
Probably the gas station she talks about stopping at.
Yeah, more than likely. That's the only one I bet I know of on that stretch of road.
Jeez, man, I've been at that gas station. Yeah. That would be extremely terrifying to have to stop at that gas station in the middle of the night to try and scrub Sasquatch smell off your car after missing 90 minutes of your time.
And it's just a little, and the road itself is a little 2-lane highway. It's straight road, but it's pretty much out in the middle of nowhere.
State police are all over it. Will pull you over at any given opportunity that you make a wrong move.
You got to watch your speed on that road.
Yeah, I wonder if it was that way in 2004.
I worked out there at Illumitech back in, before Bridget and I got married, so that would have been in 98 maybe when I was out there. And there was a lot of state police out there at that point. Yeah.
But this one was a particular interest to me, probably because it is in such close proximity to all of these other cases we've had. The UFO in Somerset over the summer, the UFO sightings, several of them over the summer, close to Somerset, the different Bigfoot sightings within Casey County, and then this particular one, which is extremely strange and kind of goes back, to that whole them changing their shape thing. To me, it doesn't sound like this woman actually saw a bipedal Sasquatch. It sounds to me like she might have caught it. She believes that in Mysterious Kentucky, she mentions that she believes that this cat it had found this cat to eat, and it had put this cat there, and that's why the cat was there and why it was there. But when she describes the Sasquatch, it almost sounds like the Sasquatch was in the middle of changing shape, maybe, or the middle of, I don't know. But it doesn't sound like a normal Sasquatch report.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. It was almost like when she approached it in the road, it was in a middle of some type of shape-shifting event, or getting ready to do that, and then when she hit it, it possibly, threw it off. Something happened.
Yeah. Which is the reason for the missing time.
Right.
And the way that the demeanor toward it was also very, very strange.
Yeah, it's like her and her friend went into hysteria.
Yeah, exactly, hysteria. And then had an hour and a half missing.
Right.
Just to turn around and go to the gas station, which, I don't know, that's a very interesting case, and it's very interesting where it happened. Somerset is also decently close to where the Stanford abductions happened, to where, there's a lot of oddness that occurs in that area of Somerset.
Yeah. And honestly, Somerset itself is 461's not, but, right next to Liberty.
Yeah.
Casey County, what we've discussed. And,
right. Yeah. Very, very odd things happen in this general area, it seems like.
Yeah.
But then again, it seems like these happen all over Kentucky.
Right.
Which takes us to our next case, the Spotsville Monster in Henderson County in 1975. This particular case happened directly to Barton's family, and it seems as almost what got Barton into cryptozoology.
Yeah.
I think this particular... Of course, Barton mentions throughout Mysterious Kentucky that he is one of these people, much like several other people that we've talked about on this show, that it seems like these things happen to quite extensively. It seems like they have a lot of experiences with these things. Barton says that he believes that the reason he has had all these experiences is because of his location in Henderson, Kentucky. Which I agree with. I think that Kentucky is definitely a zone of where the veil is thin. I definitely think, or maybe it's not. Maybe these things happen with this much frequency everywhere. But there are quite a few things that happen in Kentucky. Barton mentions, though, that Henderson County, Kentucky is a particular high strangeness. And he believes that living in Henderson his whole life is the reason he has seen as much as he has. But I also believe that Barton may be one of these people that, has started to pay attention to the void, so the void has started to pay attention to him.
Right.
Much like the James Bunch thing, much like... there's a lot of people that a lot of things have happened to them throughout their life. The Spotsville Monster, though, this story began in 1975 when Bart and his family moved to Spotsville. They had encountered the creature several times over that summer. They had seen it looking in their back windows. They had seen it underneath a street lamp at one part. Barton's mother had seen it when she went to get his brother to come for dinner. But the most interesting part of this story, of the Spotsville story, is, and I use this term in complete affection because I thought this was just the most badass thing ever, was this monster hunter, this neighbor of theirs that came, I think it was the day that they moved in, and with his shotgun broken down, saying that he had encountered this creature in the woods right outside of their house. And from there, the Barton's family began seeing it, and they reported it to the police. The police did nothing. I think at one point this guy said that he was in the woods while the police were called, and he could see the police, and they didn't know he was in the woods at the same time. And this cop leaned up against the tree and lit a cigarette and said, "Well, let me smoke the cigarette, and we'll go back and tell them that we searched it and didn't find anything."
Yeah.
And actually, that was in a YouTube documentary called The Spotsville Monster. It's a documentary. It's available on YouTube. It's through McGill Media. Barton Noonley speaks throughout. His mother speaks on her experience. Excellent documentary. And gives a lot of information on this particular case. This case, though, still echoes that intense high strangeness of a lot of these Bigfoot cases. It vanished in front of the witnesses several times. This particular neighbor, who he calls Roy, had several experiences with this thing. And he also notes that Roy is a prominent member in Henderson County community, runs a successful business, is not the type of person that would go around making this stuff up. As a matter of fact, Roy is not his real name. He has been kept. He's never wanted to be identified. He told Barton he would tell a story as long as Barton never identified him, because this brought such ridicule on Barton's family and upon him when he first publicized that, he had seen this creature. Very, very interesting story. Probably the most interesting part of this story to me is Barton went back to this man, I think it was 30 years after all this had happened, and talked to him about the incident, and he said that he would tell him these things as long as he agreed never to publish his name or give out his true identity. At one point, this man says that he encountered one of these creatures that spoke to him telepathically and said that he was not going to hurt him and asked him not to hurt it. On another occasion, he encountered one of these creatures coming from what looked like a heat wave, and it just walked out, and it apparently shouted at him to leave him alone and walked back into the heat wave and disappeared. Barton believes that these creatures are Sasquatches. From the drawing that Barton did of the creature, it looks like a Sasquatch, but I don't know. It almost looks like something different than a Sasquatch too.
Yeah, I thought it kind of resembled a Sasquatch, but in Kentucky we have lots of different types. I mean, maybe it's a different type of Sasquatch or a different race of Sasquatch.
Right.
But this area, Spotsville, is in Henderson County, and it's right on the banks of Green River.
Right.
And it's up a little bit north of that in Henderson County. It connects into the Ohio River. And I wanted to say, in that area right across the Ohio River, there's been other sightings of these beasts in Ohio.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
In Indiana.
For sure.
Or Indiana, I guess, yeah, because it's Indiana. But I think, this area, again, it's based on Green River.
Right.
The same things these ones from Casey County has been spotted in.
Right.
In other parts of Kentucky, kind of goes around these waterways.
For sure.
It's in definitely a hotbed area of things that happen, Western Kentucky. It's closer to like Owensboro. It ain't like Land Between the Lakes type area.
Right.
I mean, it's north of the Land Between the Lakes, but it's still considered Western Kentucky and in the vicinity of Land Between the Lakes.
So, and this is around Trimble as well, where Thomas Shea's done his research and found those Bigfoot out there, those families.
Yeah, it's in the same vicinity, same part of the state, Western Kentucky.
Very interesting, very interesting. And it's worth noting that it wasn't only Barton and this neighbor Roy's, or it wasn't only Barton's family and this neighbor Roy's family who were seeing this creature. It was reported pretty thoroughly at the time when this was happening around Spotsville and in those surrounding counties. It definitely worth noting that one of the reasons that Roy does not want to go on the record under his real name is that at one point, supposed state police, and it's uncertain exactly who these men were, but state police and government officials came to Roy's house and told him not to speak on this, that his family would be harmed if he did, that he would be harmed if he did. And Roy pushed back, and they showed him or did something that was thorough enough to convince him not to talk about it anymore. And not only that, but went through the process of writing a story in the local paper saying that he believed that this was a bear and that he was to go along with that story. Which, we think has happened several different times, particularly with the dogs in Monroe County.
Right.
Different cases.
Yeah, and this one's similar, because I think didn't this start out as animal mutilations, missing chickens, missing goats, and
yeah, it started out. Barton says that his family had missed a total of 200 chickens, some goats, 8 dogs, I think.
Yeah, and some of them were even mutilated on the farm. Yeah. So I mean,
surgical precision at that, just like the animals in Monroe County,
right? Which
is interesting because if these are Bigfoot creatures, one would imagine that they would. And again, we know nothing about Sasquatch really, or what these creatures are capable of. But one would imagine that they would simply rip these creatures apart, eat them maybe.
Right.
But that's not how this was. It was It was very much like animal mutilations.
Yeah, and it seems like, the precision these mutilations are surgeries, I guess you could even call them,
right,
are performed are by what you would call a skilled hand.
Exactly. And, I mean, almost, like a twisted veterinarian, for lack of a better.
Right. That's a good analogy there. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, these mutilations are reported around UFO sightings. They're reported around these critter sightings. They're reported around Sasquatch sightings, dogman sightings. But it's obvious that in the 90s, and I'm sure a lot of people still believe this. People thought that these creatures, or these animals, cattle, dogs, whatever, were being abducted by UFOs, and that the occupants of these UFOs were doing tests on them and then returning them. Yeah. Doesn't seem like that anymore.
No.
It seems like there's something completely different that I can't even really fathom is going on in conjunction with these, reports of high strangeness and these Bigfoot and these critters and these different things that we see.
Right. And even with these, mutilations, a lot of times they just happen in that there's, like, the farmer never really hears any type of ruckus going on the farm. You know how animals will get spooked, cattle get spooked. They just, they wake up one morning and they're all dead.
And it's happening.
Or they're missing even.
Right. Very much like crop circles. A farmer, there's been several reports of a farmer being in a field an hour before and then returning, being gone for an hour, coming back to the field, and there being a massive crop circle there that couldn't have happened in an hour.
Right.
A man couldn't have made in an hour. So yeah, extremely interesting on the Spotsville Monster, and extremely interesting about Barton's neighbor Roy having those encounters with these creatures where it spoke to him telepathically, both of them. Especially the one, it kind of funny in retrospect where it screamed to leave him alone.
Yeah.
I mean, why it's weird that I don't know. That's particularly interesting, especially since Roy had violent intentions on this creature. And why wouldn't he? I mean, if this thing was, around, I would go out hunting for it,
Yeah.
But it's interesting that this thing knew that he had violent intentions and he wanted it to leave him alone. And that the other one, or whatever, the same one that he encountered, said, I'm not going to hurt you. Please don't. So,
don't bother me.
Right. Yeah. Very interesting.
But, even with the cops or the law enforcement, they're saying, hey, don't look into this any further. How do we know these entities wasn't telepathically talking through the cops?
Sure.
Using them
completely.
Manipulating their mind. I mean, I know that's far-fetched.
But much of this is.
Right.
I mean, it's almost like, I believe John Keel said this at some point, like there comes a point in it where you start to realize that if one of these things is possible, like if it's possible that these Sasquatch creatures are communicating with this man telepathically, he has no reason to lie about it, he seems like a stable individual, how much more is there that is impossible that could have happened with this case? Right.
Because it doesn't make sense the cops would be like, no, you don't need to look into that.
Right.
And then manipulate him into never talking about it.
Sure, completely.
It makes me wonder what persuaded them to take that action against Roy.
Right. And why this happens so much, like in Monroe County where the sheriff was telling people, keep your kids inside, keep your animals locked up. I mean, it happens a lot like that. So, I don't know. Very, very interesting. And a lot of high strangeness in these particular Sasquatch cases, which is why I wanted to talk about them on these cryptids, because, I think a lot of people feel like cryptids are a flesh and blood thing. And they very well could be. I have no real knowledge into them, but when these really strange stuff happens with this, it gets weirder. It makes it weirder.
He's sitting in his kitchen with a bottle in his hand. He's reaching for the drawer to find his only friend. He's cold to the touch and carries a steady gaze. Just wait till he warms up, with the smoke comes the haze. Just hold on, boy, don't go out that way. You don't know it now, but you got so much to say. He takes all his needs just the way they say. One day you'll get better, but it won't be today. Now he can't take the screaming going on in his head, and every emotion can change by what somebody says. Just hold on, boy, don't go out that way. You don't know it now, but you got so much to say. Just hold on, boy, don't go out that way. You don't know it now, but you got so much to say. And why me? And why now? And why me? And why now? Take two.
So I guess from the Spotsville Monster, we'll move on to our final cryptid this evening. Very much like the Spotsville Monster, the Bearilla. The Bearilla has been seen in Mount Sterling, Kentucky, throughout the ages, really. Settlers talked about him, or Native American population talked about him with settlers when the settlers moved into the Mount Sterling region. He is described, the Bearilla gets its name from a sighting that a farmer had when this creature walked across the road in front of him in Mount Sterling in the 60s. He said it had pointed ears, it was 6.5 to 7 feet tall, silver light brown fur, and he described it as half bear, half gorilla. Ron Coffey of the Gateway Paranormal Society, located in Mount Sterling, is one of the main researchers of the Bearilla. I first run across Bearilla from a documentary I stumbled across on YouTube from Shiver, the horror movie streaming service called Boogeymen. There was a special episode on Bearilla, on Boogeymen, and they've actually done a few different things on Kentucky. Definitely worth checking that series out. I'll stick that and the Spotsville Monster documentary in the show notes for this episode. Definitely check those out. But Ron Coffey is the major investigator in this particular instance. There have been several sightings of Bearilla around Mount Sterling. When this particular farmer first sighted Bearilla and gave it its name, there were a rash of sightings of Bearilla in Mount Sterling at the time. He's very much like the Spotsville Monster, like the Waddy werewolves, which play into this case. Very much like the beast of the land between the lakes. Bearilla is described by Ron Coffey as being a werewolf-like creature. And Ron makes note that he hates using that werewolf term simply because of the connotations, and I agree with him completely. Dogman is the word that has been passed around. Linda Godfrey made that term famous for these creatures. But they're very canid-like. And this creature, just like the Spotsville Monster, just like the Monroe County monkeys, mutilates cattle, or supposedly mutilates cattle. Something happens to these cattle when this thing is in its vicinity that, those surgical taking off of the face, taking off of the stomach, those surgical things that doesn't appear like it was done for food. And in addition, there are also reports of Bearilla killing campers. There's reports from the 50s of a camper being found with white fur in his arm, like he ripped it off of the Bearilla as it was attacking him, and a woman that was ripped in half hanging from a tree. Very much like the reports of the killings in Land Between the Lakes.
Very similar.
Almost identical. And that's interesting. There's a lot of reports of these dogmen, or whatever these things are. If it's dogmen, or if it's a different type of Sasquatch, or if it's whatever the Spotsville Monster is, of them killing campers. Like, there are several reports of deaths based on these things.
Right. And, also this kind of goes back on missing hikers.
Yeah, completely.
And people who, are out wandering the woods or hiking out out of nowhere and they disappear, or backwoods camping even, and they just disappear.
No, completely. And actually, funny thing you brought that up. It's mentioned throughout this Bearilla documentary that I watched, and throughout the little research I did on this particular creature. that Daniel Boone National Forest is right there with Mount Sterling.
Yeah.
Like it's literally on the edge of Daniel Boone National Forest.
Did this documentary mention Sand Mountain and the... because Aliens Over Kentucky mentioned this Bearilla. It doesn't mention it by name. It mentions it by being a massive white creature like a Sasquatch that stalks people at night. But the interesting thing is that there's a place out there, Mount Sterling, called Sand Mountain. And for decades, people have observed unexplained lights floating above this mountain, and they're calling them ghost lights. That's what they're known as, to the Kentucky ghost lights.
That is very interesting. No, I had not heard anything about that.
Yeah, and then in the same vicinity is the legend about the Bearilla, which is talked about a large white creature wandering the back roads of the mountains of Sand Mountain.
Which is exactly this creature.
Yeah.
Is Sand Mountain in Mount Sterling?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, this is where the area that's called Sand Mountain, I think, where this takes place.
Dude.
So it's not only got this cryptid,
right?
It's got ghost lights, which is UFOs.
Right.
That appears there for decades, and people will see them all the time.
And we're right back to that whole high strangeness aspect of these Sasquatch sightings, or these dogmen, whatever they are. That's crazy. No, it didn't mention that at all. Interesting.
And in this, in Aliens Over Kentucky, some people have stated, and it doesn't really give like a date or time, but it says if this creature catches you, it will take you into the mysterious light where it lives.
Jeez. Whoa.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
And that's weird because I never really heard of the Bearilla by name until you brought it up. And then I was like, wait a minute, there's something in this about Mount Sterling. And I just happened to cross-reference it because I had it kind of in the UFO thing. But then once I started looking, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, this is exactly what you're talking about.
Jeez. Yeah, that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but where the Bearilla is seen is only like 20 minutes north, or Mount Sterling is about 20 minutes away from Waddy, where the Waddy werewolves were reported.
Exactly.
And I will make a quick note that somebody mentioned our pronunciation of Waddy and questioned our Kentucky heritage because of the way we pronounced Waddy in some YouTube comments. I'm going to have to stop reading the YouTube comments. But please give us a pronunciation lesson. I don't know how you pronounce Waddy any other way besides Waddy.
I think that sounds pretty Kentucky. Waddy.
Anyway, Waddy's about 20 minutes away from where this Bearilla was seen in Mount Sterling. So maybe there's a lot of these creatures. Maybe there's several of these creatures. They all take you back to their mysterious light home.
Right.
That's wild.
I thought that was pretty wild. And if you're talking about that only being 20 minutes away from Waddy.
Yeah.
Then if you look at other ones, all of them are within 20 or 30 minutes of each other.
Exactly.
And then you just kind of start stringing along all these connected cryptids. Exactly.
Funny you bring that up because Ron Coffey talks about how in Mount Sterling, the Native American population called these creatures the Limnic. Whereas, and I'm not totally sure about this. This is Ron's deduction. I think maybe these creatures may be different entities, but I do see where he's going with this, and I like that line of thought. They, up north from us, they might call these creatures the Wendigo, whereas out west, we've mentioned it several times on this episode, one may call these creatures skinwalkers.
Right.
And he also mentions, the French had this creature when they come down from Canada called the loup-garou, which was a type of werewolf creature. And I didn't know this until I started doing some research for this episode, but apparently the French were a major people the initial settlers in Kentucky. Like apparently,
I did not know that.
Yeah, apparently we had a major French settlement here. The French were all about that, and they spoke with the Native Americans and stuff. So it's almost like that French population in Kentucky brought that loup-garou legend, which the Indian, or, the Native American population already had with the limnic. And, up north in Canada, they call it the Wendigo. Out west, they call it the skinwalker. These things are everywhere.
Right.
And I mean, we definitely do have a major dogman Sasquatch deal. Mm-hmm. Something's going on there. But it seems like that's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
It seems like they're all over the place.
They just go by a different name.
Right.
Or maybe a different description, just like with the kangaroo.
Right.
It could be something different, but people assume it's a kangaroo.
Different people call it different things depending on what it is.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. There are many, many different cryptids in Kentucky that we didn't get to tonight. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, this will probably turn into an ongoing, maybe a trilogy, maybe a 4-parter, maybe a saga in and of itself.
Exactly, because it seems like the more we dig in,
the more we get. We're already to the point where, even though we talked about them just a little bit with the Bearilla, there's still so much to cover on the werewolves and the dogman in Kentucky. Not only that, but there are water monsters in Kentucky that we didn't even touch on in this episode, so we'll definitely be getting around to those very, very soon. In addition, like I said, a lot of our research tonight come from Mysterious Kentucky by Barton Noonley. Barton, if you're listening, we appreciate all of this research that you put in to find out these different things on these topics. We'd love to speak with you, love to talk to you, love to get your personal opinions on these things. In addition, it also come from
Aliens Over Kentucky. The authors are Jacob Floyd and Jenny Floyd.
Yeah, and again, if anybody associated with any of those sightings, Floyd's, if we'd love to speak with you all, love to talk to you about your investigations and about these particular cases. Final thoughts on all of this?
There is a lot of weirdness and strangeness that happen in Kentucky.
A lot.
There's a lot of cryptids that some of them appear to be the same thing, but then again, you get like oddballs like Spring Hill Jack,
right? Which
is nothing like Sasquatches or dogmen,
sure,
or anything else that we can discuss, even like the Kelly goblins or anything of that nature. Right. It's even
total crazy one-offs.
Yeah, even the Popelick monster is kind of a one-off. We talked about him the first,
the lizard
season.
Man.
Yeah, lizard man. The gravedigger even is
kind of
an odd one. Yeah. So what about you? What do you?
The more I dig into things like this, the more we do the show, the more I research, the more I investigate, the more I think that these things are not singular creatures. Like, they're not, like, all of this is connected in some way. UFOs, Spring Hill Jacks, Sasquatches, and I don't want to say that they're all the same creature, but I do think, a lot like Greg and Dana Newkirk talk about in Hellier, I think the phenomena itself shows us what it wants us to see sometimes.
Yeah.
Or it shows us things in a form that I don't know, because a lot of people are frightened by these Sasquatches or these different things. But I think the phenomena at large affects their hold on reality.
Yeah.
And what we see and what we get out of it. But I also think that the people that talk about these things are reliable witnesses that know what they've saw and know that what they saw is not the ordinary outlook on everyday life or a part of the ordinary, the ordinary existence of it's something out of the ordinary. And then at the same time, it's very ordinary. It seems like it's just another part of life to a lot of these people.
Right.
Definitely seems like Kentucky is a major hotspot for this. But then I say that, and I wonder if we lived in Minnesota and did the same type of show, if we wouldn't find all of this in Minnesota.
I would say it's very possible.
Or, or Kansas, or I would say New Mexico, but we know New Mexico's got a lot of crazy stuff.
Right,
I would say Utah, but Utah's got a lot of crazy stuff.
I would say Missouri, but
it's got a lot of crazy stuff. Yeah. I mean, it seems like everywhere, once you start digging, is a hot zone, just like we are.
Yeah.
Just like Roswell, just like Groom Lake, just like Utah. I can't remember the Utah Basin in Utah. Just like Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania. Like, something's happening. And all of this stuff, it seems, is connected. But, you know, just like we do, we get caught up in saying this may be too weird to mention aloud. But maybe we're not getting weird enough.
I agree with that.
Like, maybe we're not being like, you know, maybe we're not jumping into the weird end. That light in the hallway just popped on really bright, so that was a weird synchronicity right there.
There you go. Yeah, maybe the universe is speaking to us.
Right. Maybe we need to get weirder. But, you know, the takeaway is always the same. Nothing's solved. We don't have any solutions for these things.
Yeah.
Just weird stuff.
Just oddness, and we, you know, try to go in depth and try to look at it objectively, but we end up pretty much with no answers.
What do you do at the end of the day? You know, do I believe it happened? Do I believe it happened to these people? Absolutely. I absolutely believe something's happening to these people, and they're seeing something, and they continue to see stuff. What it is, I don't know if we'll ever know exactly what it is, but I definitely think we're going to have to get a lot weirder if we're going to find any answers.
And we have to kind of get weirder with our objectivity of looking at this.
Totally.
And we also have to live with the possibility that we don't have the methods or the intelligence to know what this is. Completely. It's beyond us.
Completely. I follow a lot of researchers on Facebook and on social media in general. And, you know, I love them all, and we all have something different to bring to the investigation and to this type of research. But so many of them are bogged down in scientific explanations for this stuff or historic explanations for this stuff. And I said the other day, and it wasn't really a shot at anybody, it's just me being me and me focusing on the side of this stuff that I want to focus on. But I said, I'm not questioning science or history. I'm questioning our entire grasp upon reality at large. To me, this stuff is not about scientific explanations or historic explanations. It's about something that is happening to us and continues to happen to us that changes everything. Like, it changes our grasp on reality.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we're going to be able to find any answers as long as we're approaching it through means that are refused to be updated or refuse to take any of this weirdness and this strangeness that is happening. I mean, it's documented that it's happening into account.
Right.
And it can't. I mean, by its very nature, the rules of it, it can't take this into account.
Right. And we have to open our minds up. I mean, you know, several hundred years ago, people thought, you know, the sun revolved around the earth.
Right.
The earth was flat.
Totally. I'm going to get in some trouble with that one.
Yeah, I don't I want to edit that one out. We'll get the email. But yeah, I mean, we have to look at things objectively, and we also have to kind of embrace what mystery this is.
Totally. Completely.
And kind of get a state where, like, maybe what we know as knowledge doesn't apply.
Right.
You know, just like back in, you know, as I was saying, back in the day, it's, you know, people thought the sun revolved around the earth, and now that's completely false.
Sure.
And as new methods come out and new ways of looking at data or even capturing things, I mean, who thought we had the ability to use our phone as a camera and have it on us all the time to, you know, have the ability to video or take pictures unlimited.
Very much so.
It's limitless.
In 1955, I think if you had told somebody that we'd have had that ability, it would have been insane to think about.
And it probably would have sounded crazy.
Totally. Completely. So now if you think about that, how long has it been since 55? 50. Let's say 1950 to 2020. Yeah. How long is that? 70 years? So in another 70 years, we could theoretically begin to have some of the answers to this. Where these creatures are coming from, what these creatures are. But that's going to take getting really weird, I think. You know,
because the technology we have today is really weird.
Totally.
Compared to 70
Completely.
years ago.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about incidences on this show tonight that happened in the 50s as if they happened in the modern world. And to me, 50 is not that long ago. But then you think about the technological leaps and the scientific leaps.
Yeah.
And, it's crazy to think about.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the leaps we make in a 5-year span in this current age we live in is insane.
Yeah, completely insane. So what's going to happen in 10 years? What will we know about what these things are 10 years from now? And, even to take this into a paranormal lens, in the 50s, we had flying saucers, we had Roswell, in 2019, we have confirmation that the government has pieces from these flying saucers. We have videos of these things from the military. We have confirmation that these things exist, basically.
Right.
So what about another 70 years?
Yeah.
I mean, what will we know then? Will we know how these things move? Will we know where these things come from? Will we know what they are?
Will we live peacefully?
Will we live peacefully? Do we already know this? Is it being covered up? It's like you and I were talking about before the show. I don't feel like these authorities have any idea what this is. And if there is a cover up, it's to keep it covered up because of that fact.
Yeah.
That's going to do it tonight for the return of the Kentucky Cryptids. Tune back in very soon. We've got a lot of big things coming up. More reports on cryptids, more reports on some classic UFO sightings, some classic UFO incidences. We've got a lot of big things coming up for 2020. Visit us on Facebook,
Twitter,
YouTube,
MidnightKentucky.com,
and send any correspondence you may have, weird sightings,
corrections.
Anything you guys got like that, send it to midnightinkentucky@gmail.com or message us directly on Twitter or on Facebook. We're always on there. Till the next moon rises, Nightowls, for Midnight in Kentucky. I'm Ben.
I'm Steven.
Good night.
You've been listening to Midnight in Kentucky,
A Ransom Letter Publishing podcast.
Join us on Twitter and Facebook.
Or get in contact with your questions, comments, or stories of high strangeness
at midnightinkentuckypodcast@gmail.com.